Death Valley. We present to you the Nerdy Manroom with your hosts, Hassel and Monster. Monster, give us some news, man. What's going on this week?
Yeah, well, I kind of made a joke last week about we took a week off and there was no news to really report other than a handful of things. And then apparently I angered the news gods and they struck back against us because we've had a lot of stuff come out in the last week and a half. Really, not even a week and a half. It was really just a full week at this point. But starting off, I think I told everybody last week I was going to the movies to catch the new Ghostbusters Flick as it came out because that came out this past Friday. And as a spoiler-free review, it was actually a very good movie. Rating it on our normal scale of 1 to 10, easy 9. I mean, it was.
Wow.
I went into it. To be honest, I went into it and I was thinking, yeah, I've got high hopes it's going to be good, but probably low expectations that it's going to be. Especially when you're talking about you're trying to make this for a new generation, right? And you've got these kids in the movie now, and you feel like they're going to, for lack of a better way to say it, infantilized it, make it for kids and stuff. And there's some of that, but they really didn't. It wasn't as juvenile as I thought it would be. Like even the kids in there were, they talk like kids do now. They were a little more, a little less, I guess, punny or kiddie as it was when we were younger, and more along the lines of, hey, let's talk like adults because we're already thinking we are anyway. But it was pretty good in that aspect. But once you got past that, which was probably the hardest thing to get past, plot was very good. Tone, it was like watching the first film. Even over the second one, this one had the tone of the first one, and I think it helped too that they had the same music score as the first one, and it matched up pretty good to that. So that really did a lot for it. But that plus the callbacks and Easter eggs they did to the original too, overall I had to give it like a 7.5 at that point. But what really drove it up for me is as you watch more of it, you're hoping that, hey, where's the original team at, right? So they come back at some point in the movie. And they have a sub story about what went on with them, and it kind of goes through the whole movie. But for their participation, they were there for the second and third act of the movie, really, and they actually participated. I mean, it wasn't just, hey, here's a cameo, we're gonna answer a phone and then not be on screen again. They were actually in a good chunk of the movie, and for me, that drove it up to like an 8.5 because I was really enjoying seeing them back. But then you get to the third act, and there's always a big battle, something like this. And when that kind of stuff happened, they had this huge nostalgia moment. Really tried to play up the legacy of Egon, who unfortunately Harold Ramis wasn't able to be in it because no longer with us. But they really did some stuff to honor him. I won't spoil it or give any of that away, but after they did that, if you're a fan of Ghostbusters, like a hardcore fan, it tugs at the heartstrings. If you're not, it's still, well, that's pretty dang cool to see, sort of thing. So for me, for that drove it up to a 9. So my overall score of the movie was actually a 9. And it's hard for me to give anything a 10 just because I always think everything can be improved upon. I mean, even Avengers or Empire Strikes Back, I'm like 9.5 or something. I'm not giving it a full 10. But this one was very good. It was a good legacy movie. It did set up, potential to have stuff for a new generation while still honoring what came before without, completely jumping over it like the last Ghostbusters film tried to do and tried to reboot. This one did not go that route. This one, really honored the team, paid homage to Egon, to Harold Ramis.
Well, I think they pretty well did the Halloween thing, didn't they? Just completely dismissed that last flick and.
Yeah. There's no mention of that at all. There's a lot of mention of the first two movies, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but they talk a lot about the cross rip of '84, which is, the whole thing that happened in the first movie and Ivo Shandor's building and, Zool and all that, because that does play a part in this one too, without giving anything away. But, really good movie, really solid. I would say that I particularly enjoyed that one, more than probably anything else I've seen so far this year in the theater. Yeah, and I really liked some of the other stuff I've seen this year, from a theater experience, right? But like Shang-Chi was really good and all, but I still think this was, this to me so far this year.
I watched the first 30 minutes of that last Thursday night. I was impressed with the 30 minutes I watched. Like a damn fool, I cut it off to watch the Falcons. because I forgot they were on Thursday Night Football, and yeah, they didn't show up. So thank sweet merciful God, a couple of liquor drinks in, I fell asleep in the chair.
You shut off a good movie to be disappointed in life. Is
that
what happened here?
They have scored 3 points in the last 2 damn games, and those 3 points was in the first quarter of the week prior's game. They went scoreless, goose egg. And I remember waking up at 11:30 going, thank God I passed out.
So, I can understand that. But speaking of Shang-Chi, that's one of the things that we didn't talk about last week is, the Spider-Man trailer came out. And I will say that I watched it on the computer, watched it on the TV, and each one of those got me hyped. But if you don't go watch that that trailer on an IMAX screen, you don't understand what hype is for that movie. Because seeing that on the big screen, that trailer was blew me away when I got to see it in the theater. Because that actually came on before Ghostbusters. That was one of the trailers during the time.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. I actually got another Morbius trailer while I'm speaking about that during the movie too, and had a lot more footage than what the last trailer put together was. Like it's that same trailer, but they add more scenes in of showing Morbius when he's actually in his vampire form, so you get to see more of him and looks spectacular. But going and seeing that Spider-Man trailer in front of the movie was almost worth the price of admission, even if I hadn't enjoyed the Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah, I watched it twice, like everyone, and tried to pick it apart and overthink it, and search for Easter eggs. Maybe someone scoured and not missed, or kind of how they give us the disillusion with like the Avengers trailer, where you had Hulk in the background, and then later in the movie it's actually Hulkbuster with Bruce Banner inside. So I mean, I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen, though. I mean,
I have been impressed, and there's so many questions. I mean, you see Doc Ock saying, "You're not Peter Parker" when he takes off the mask, so you realize, yes, and Strange even tells you this is all multiverse problem, right? These are all villains from multiverse. Spider-Man they all died fighting Spider-Man, but
due to technical difficulties, apparently on my end, I was cut off mid-sentence. Won't blame Monster. I think he tried to sabotage me just there. But
I got to get you around to my way of thinking every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I say something that's counterproductive of what you got going there, it's like, tell this producer, man, he just does what he wants.
So I think we were actually talking about the No Way Home trailer, and I know you were trying to share a thought there before it cut us off. So if you remember where you were, we could pick back up from there. And
I was in the process of talking about how they did the little, sidestep or misdirection, so to speak. So you kind of wonder how much of misdirection are they going to lead us with this trailer? Like, how much are they actually hiding? I do like that, I mean, they touched on, I guess, all these villains were villains that had died, and that for the more, you're being led to believe that Peter must die or sacrifice himself for the sake of the multiverse. Which it's ringing a whole lot true to the brand new day, one more day storyline, even a brand new day. I like, maybe this isn't Strange, it might be Mustapha, which I'm cool with.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed a couple of things that I've noticed were called out in the video. There's a scene where you see a goblin coming in on a glider. It looks like the Harry Osborn version versus the Green Goblin.
I didn't see it in the trailer. I saw it in some steals. I seen the full blown, Spider-Man 1 Goblin, but I have seen art that shows, and I'm hoping this is actually production art, not just something a fan's done, where it is the Norman Osborn, but he has like this kind of purple cloak type thing over the outfit he wore in the first one. And he's got some goggles. That is pretty cool.
And maybe that's what it is. I don't know. That raised a few questions. Everybody's like, that's Harry. Is he the sixth villain? But then there was also, I don't know if you've seen it, there's multiple versions of the trailer put out with different languages. And the Portuguese trailer, which is for Brazil and some of those areas, there's a scene with that big wide shot. Everybody's like, this shot is too wide just to have one hero coming against these three villains with Electro, Lizard, and Sandman. And then there's the one for Brazil shows the Lizard snap his head to the one direction real quick and just kind of fall away, and everybody's like, So did you cut something out of the scene where someone else was punching him? And
the steels look real blurry. I know what you're talking about, because there's like two spots where the steels look kind of blurry, like they've distorted the image a little. So I'm kind of wondering if that's where they're blurring the other two Spider-Man out, or I mean, we want some surprises, of course, but I mean, just go ahead and fucking confirm them. I mean, just
yeah,
you
and
want to sell more tickets that way, endlessly.
Andrew Garfield was on a show the other day, and he's like, I am not talking about this anymore. You'll figure it out whenever the movie comes out, if I'm in it or not. But also, Michael Keaton was on a talk show this past week and said that he has actually shot some footage in the Vulture costume.
Yes.
But they have not confirmed if that's for No Way Home or if that's for Morbius, because he is in Morbius as the character. They just never show him in the costume. So I'm assuming it's for Morbius, but I wouldn't mind seeing him back in No Way Home as well.
We already know that he's in Morbius, so you almost got to think this has to be for No Way Home. I did like the fact that I seen on Electro, and he had Stark Tech, like he had an arc reactor on his shoulder. So I mean, I'm wondering if they're kind of working that into it. Would, that would make more sense for Michael Keaton to be there, because of him and the Tinkerer, who have been dealing with this Stark technology stuff, were able to, regulate Electro's powers using Stark technology.
Or for Doc Ock either, because if you notice his tentacles, they look like some of the Iron Man type armor from Iron Man 2, the one where he puts on
they have this red strip in them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it looks very similar to the way it's moving on that tentacle. It looks very similar to what Tony put on after he got out of the race car when Whiplash attacked him in Iron Man 2. So I'm sure we'll see more. I mean, the movie comes out December 17th. I can't wait for it. Spider Monday or Cyber Monday as they're trying to take over and sell their tickets. I will probably be buying some on that first day to go. So yeah, I have all intentions. And this one is a theater only, so Hassel's actually going to have to get off his butt and out of the house to go watch it.
That's when I'll get off the sofa and I'll be there in theater with the popcorn. I'll probably hit an IMAX, because the one in Macon sells alcoholic beverages, so I'll probably be there. And
we've got a few of the.
I was there with Star Wars.
We've got a few of those around here, but there's one close to the house, and while that one does not sell full service food, it is still the full recliners. It's got the movable seats, so if you want to pay the extra for the the RPX experience, and their RPX screen same as an IMAX screen, they just have their own branding on it. But that's usually where we go, just because it's 10 minutes from the house. But there is one about 20 minutes away from my house that actually has the food service, and they actually take your order, but you have to be there. They only show a few showings a day because you have to be there. You have to order your food, and they bring it to you at the seat, right? But we usually don't hit that one up too often, just because it's further away, and I'm cheap. I'd rather just pay a little bit less and go for the one close to the house. It's about a $5 difference per ticket, and that can add up quickly when everybody goes.
Yeah, very fast. And then let's face it, I mean, the further we travel these days, with good old job Brandon's done, fuel's expensive.
It does get expensive. Which is some good news for you, because I don't remember if you said you went and watched it. I don't think you did, but the Venom Let There Be Carnage, since we're talking Spider-Man, that actually his digital today comes out on Blu-ray and DVD on December 14th. So right in time for Spider-Man, they timed that perfectly. I will probably be picking that one up. So I'll probably wait and pick it up on the Blu-ray and DVD, because I like to put it in collection, right, for all the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So a few more weeks, but I'll have that one added in as well. And some people have.
I'll probably go ahead and get the digital just to go ahead and see it, just because, I mean, we got the long weekend coming up. It's Thanksgiving, so I'll probably rewatch Venom 1 just to kind of rehash things, because I mean, the movies I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but if you take it as an Elseworld. But with that being said, I'm still. It's been 2 years I haven't seen this event, so.
Yeah, well, since you brought that up though about the long weekend, a couple of TV news items for that long weekend viewing. I don't think any of these are necessarily new, and I haven't watched it. Well, I can only watch one of them at this point anyway, but I haven't watched it yet, so I can't give an idea of a review for it. But He-Man Revelations Part 2 came out today, November 23rd, which is the day we're recording.
Excited about that, actually.
I am too. I've got to wait until tomorrow night to watch it with the kid. I've got work tomorrow during the day, and we're recording and stuff tonight, so it'll be tomorrow before we watch it. But also tomorrow, Hawkeye premieres on Disney Plus on November 24th.
It's the first 2 episodes, correct?
I believe so. I'm about 95% sure it is both the first 2 episodes. But I'm excited to watch both of those tomorrow. The Hawkeye actually looks better than I thought it would be. I wasn't too keen on it when it first came out, but watching the trailer, it looks pretty good. And then He-Man Part 2 looks much better than anything that Part 1 had in it. Best way I could put it.
Yeah, I mean, let's just chop it up to what it was. I mean, you built your excitement in the first episode and the final episode. The middle was just kind of the story of Tila, and it is what it is. But I'm pretty stoked with what I've seen trailer wise for the second half, and I know I watched that before my fiance gets here. I will be murdered because I was so surprised when this woman sat here the entire time and she watched every episode and was like, "There aren't any more." That's it. I mean, welcome to being a nerd. This is what happens. We get a taste, and
we get hype for 2 years. We get hype, and then it all pulls away after it's over with. And then you've got the.
Yeah, I mean, at least you only had to wait a few months. I mean, this could have been 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
we've seen it before, or if you think about the first part and haven't watched the original cartoon, it's been 30 years, right? I mean, it's a stretch.
That's a hell of a long dry stretch.
Yeah, but since we're talking about He-Man, it kind of leads us directly into toy news. A lot of toy news came out in the last week or so. First off, Hasbro, Marvel Legends, Quasar. We talked about last week how Nova was now online at Walgreens, but now Quasar starting to hit the U.S. Kind of weird because usually you see them in the port areas first, New York or California, Florida. This one actually is showing up in Massachusetts for some reason. It's the first stores getting it. That's the only places I've seen it for sale on eBay from. I always check there just to see. So when I check eBay, so when it's in my area, I'm like, oh, now I'll go to Walgreens and look for it. If I'm not seeing one, if I'm not seeing one in my state, I'm not wasting all my time. But that did start hitting stores last week. They say they expect it to be online soon, but if it goes the route of Nova, it'll probably be at least a month to 2 months for us on there, especially with the holidays coming in. But for anyone who's looking for that one, that is out there. But while we're on Hasbro, let's touch on the HasLabs a little bit. Proton Pack. This thing has gotten up to 145% of the goal. And
I'm impressed. I'm not gonna lie. I am impressed.
And they have come out and shown the next I think they've shown all the tiers, but the only two that they have full pictures up of that stay up right now are the first bundle, which is the hose for the neutrino wand, as well as a sticker set from the original show or from the original movie. And then they've got what they're calling their Afterlife Bundle, which is tier 2, which has not been unlocked yet, but they showed it as a mini Stay Puft marshmallow guys who are burnt up and stuff. And if you watch the movie, I won't spoil it, but when you watch the movie, there's a bunch of those little things around, and they are actually pretty funny. I thought
everyone's seen the commercials, and they look adorable, little adorable gremlin creatures that I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I'm a casual Ghostbusters fan. I love the first 2 movies, and I'm sure I'm going to love Afterlife. And the Proton Pack, I mean, it looks cool as shit. I thought that was one of the neater things that they did, for the reach goals or whatever, was the little stay. But the stickers are a bit lame. The hose was really, but.
And in the second tier, they've got stickers as well. It's the same stickers, but instead of being green ectoplasm for Slimer, they look like they're white. They're just color white. It's the exact same ones, but they're color white to be like Stay Puft marshmallow guys burnt on the back.
Are they glow in the dark, maybe?
I don't know if they are. I don't remember seeing that, but I didn't get to watch the entire fan first that they did for it. But I know they are solid white. They're supposed to look like the marshmallow guys melted on there, basically. But I don't know. They may be glow in the dark. I'd have to look up and see. I'm not really certain at this point.
Didn't they have Egon's notebook in there as well?
That is in tier 3. That's a rumor for tier 3, or they may have actually said that, but they haven't shown any. I think they showed pictures. Or some people found leaked pictures for tiers 3 and 4, and 4 is like a stand for it, but they haven't officially released those or put them online yet. So it's kind of hard to say yes or no. I haven't seen them. So and until there's official word, I'm pretty sure that's probably what it is. But until there's official word, I kind of hard to say. But since we're on Hasbro,
while we're on Hasbro, what about this Rancor?
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's talk
son
about
of a
this
bitch's
elevator room.
nosedive.
Yeah,
He is nosedive.
So I was very upset when they showed the second tier, which was the bones. So let's recap. Tiers 1, Gamora and Guard. Okay, you knew that was coming with it, even though they've released that figure multiple times. You kind of knew it. Tier 2 was bones. And that was kind of lame. That should have just been part of the figure altogether. That shouldn't have been a tier. I see even people who want those bones saying, "Why is this a tier versus something that just came with it for $350?"
That's an accessory that comes with it. That would be like the tentacle that comes with the fucking Sentinel.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, but then we get into tiers 3 and 4. Tiers 3 was shown last week. Salacious Crumb, which is a figure that's been released before, and actually the one that's coming with it, it's in a new packaging. But that figure was just up for pre-order to buy. That exact one was up for pre-order to buy as a standalone figure. So why are we getting that as a tier? And then tier 4 was a Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi, which kind of makes sense for this, and we kind of figured that. And it is a new sculpt with a pinless body and all, which seems to be a big deal. But at the same time,
literally have one hanging on my wall right here.
Yeah, we just got this figure.
Different.
We just got this figure a year ago.
But yeah,
we got the same figure a year ago, just slightly different body mold, and maybe the sculpting's a little bit better. But at the same time, I thought that one was a nice one. But at the same time, when you look at everything, everybody said, well, we've already got most of this stuff. You're not giving us anything new. So whereas this lab on 11/20 was at 56% of 9,000 backers, we're now down to 53%. We went from 5,000 to 4,700 and some change. And it's like, whoa, this went the wrong way. When we show these things, they're supposed to go upwards, right?
Fast.
So what happened when Galactus came out? We showed you all this stuff, and you showed Silver Surfer, you showed Morg, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm buying in." It goes up quickly. Just there's the spikes all of a sudden. This one went the opposite way. It dipped.
Yeah, because they were getting pissed off because they were having to give the new arrivals to get the spike to jump.
Yeah,
and they were starting to get pissed and talking about, "Oh, if y'all don't do this, we'll never sell all this stuff now." But I mean, let's be honest. We're going to get that Luke Skywalker. I mean, he is going to be released in a fucking Mandalorian wave or something.
Oh, yeah.
As the finale episode, Luke Skywalker, it's coming. We know it's coming. He'll probably become the fucking Grogu. So, I mean,
they will not do the same thing. Like Marvel Legends basically threatened the fans, like, hey, if we don't sell this Galactus, you're not going to see these heralds for 2 years at minimum. Star Wars will not do that. Yeah,
because the fans could have got pissed and said, "You know what? Fuck you. You ain't my money." And you got a lot of time and effort then wasted.
Yeah, but Star Wars, they won't do that. They're still going to come out with those figures individually no matter what. And they haven't even tried to threaten it. But it's like, okay, so what was the point of these tiers? These tiers do not make me want to spend $350. And I saw a lot of people online, too, say that, hey, why would I spend $350 for the stuff that I've already got, even though I want the Rancor, when I can go spend $400 and buy a 1-to-1 scale Proton Pack? And it's kind of funny that the day that everything dropped from 56 or 57% for the Rancor down to 53, the Proton Pack went from 121 to 132% the same day. So people backed out of one and went and got the other one. They're like, I can't buy all three of them because there's three things going on. Sky Striker's still at the same percentage it was. I mean, they've had a few sales, but it ain't not enough to move the percentage point.
Well, you got to look. The Rancor, that's Return of the Jedi, 80s. Ghostbusters, the nostalgia part of that is 80s. G.I. Joe Sky Striker, 80s. So it's the same adults buying these.
Yeah, and they're fans of the same property.
So they got to pick and choose which they want of the three because, not everyone has, $1,200 by the time it's all said and done to buy all three. And so they're going to pick and choose. And when you put out this shit, you can have arrogance. And I think that's where Hasbro's Star Wars team maybe thought in their arrogance, hey, we can post a picture of this Rancor finally painted, scatter the little bones around him, and show the three reprint of paints figures and say, their fans will buy it. And we didn't.
But that was another thing on that Rancor too, was the paint scheme. A lot of folks complain that the paint scheme, if you go back and actually look, there's spots of it that do not match the prints from the original Return of the Jedi. It's like it's off. It's some of the grays and some of and even the brown on it was like too bright of a brown. It should have been dulled down more. And
it kind of looked a little too dark in some of the pictures I've seen. I mean, maybe it was the lighting, I'm not sure, but it just seemed very, very dark and off colored to me. I mean, I didn't.
Yeah. Well, they've still got about 20-ish days or so to go on that. So we'll see how it ends up. It may go the way of the Cookie Monster, you know. We'll see how that happens.
We have a great image of that. We have a great image of that.
Yeah. But, you know, we'll see where that goes. But there are some other Hasbro news out this week for some other toys. Transformers. There's actually Transformers, not just from Hasbro, but in general, has had some good news this week. War for Cybertron, their Kingdom, they've had their final wave come out. It's been postponed multiple times because of all the shipping and everything else. But they finally announced the last 3 figures, which are supposed to be 2 or 3 waves ago. But there's a Blaster who looks fantastic. And then Autobot Slammer, which was, you know, I think he was a part of Metroplex or Fort Max, one of those. He was like the tank that was in there. And then Autobot Pipes, which is just a repaint of Huffer, I believe. Still, they look pretty good. I know for the fans who are buying those to collect them, those are all nice ones. And even the Blaster looks, you know, much nicer than anything else we've got in a while, other than maybe a Masterpiece version. But those have gone up for sale on most of the stores like Big Bad Toy Store, TF Source, The Chosen Prime. But oddly enough, Hasbro, while they announced them, has still not put it on their Hasbro Pulse site for pre-orders. Everybody else has it up and say they're arriving in January, hopefully, depending on the shipping. But you pay for this
exclusiveness, G.
Yeah.
You pay for this.
I mean, yeah, but it is not on there, which is weird. You know, my son collects those, so I had to pre-order them, but I just went the Big Bad Toy Store route because that's usually where I end up getting most of his stuff from anyway, and a lot of other stuff that I don't buy directly from Hasbro. But
Big Bad Toy Store don't get the credit it deserves. I got a huge shipment of my loot in, you know, over the weekend, and I meant to unveil him here. I put together the Build-A-Figure Age of Apocalypse Colossus. He's amazing. Next show I'll have him in here where I can, you know, I have him actually displayed in my living room of all places. But the wave itself, the wave looks incredible. The Cyclops is really great. Iceman looks amazing. Even the Rogue, you would think she would be one of the more basic. She looks really good. She's spot on. The Joseph Magneto looks great. I mean, Legion and Shadowcat, nah. Sabretooth is far superior than the last stage of Apocalypse Sabretooth we got. And he's got interchangeable heads, and I don't know why he came with 2 ponytails, but he does. I don't know, maybe to get a ponytail for both heads off. They're tweaked just a slight bit, but
yeah.
All in all, they all went together really well. I liked them. Colossus looks great. He towers over the rest of the wave. I kind of stuck him next to Maestro just for, you know, scaling size, and he holds his own. Like, you feel like he could throw a few blows.
Nice. You know, and I know we're running a little tighter on time after some of our technical difficulties, but a couple other toy news things to run through. X Transbots, third-party Transformer Masterpiece, they've got their Paragon, which is their version of First Aid, up for pre-order now. It comes out in fourth quarter of next year, so quite a while for it, but this is like the 3rd piece of Defense Sword they've done, and it actually comes with, it's pretty cool because as the ambulance, he comes with a medical bay that you can actually place other Transformers on, like if he was
operating. That looks really good, too.
Yeah,
really good.
And it's really neat how they incorporated that into being part of the arm. So you can tell that that's actually the arm piece that he transforms into and I guess parts forms onto for Defense Sword's arm. But the arm comes out looking great for Defense Sword. And it's nice that they included it in there with the figure because I've seen them do before with others where you have to buy all those pieces separately after you've already spent $100 a piece on all these figures. Well, you know, these X Transbots are about $100 a figure, but they threw that piece in there and just upped the price for like $30. It went from 104 to 129. So I was like, that's not bad, especially if you're trying to get the build of, you know, the combiner, which I am. And speaking on that same combiner, their version of Groove, I'm probably going to butcher this name, but it's like Jokund or something like that. It actually started arriving. So there's some reviewers who've gotten them early from straight from the company from X Transbots to do some reviews online, but I actually got an email this morning that mine should be in my stash in the next 3 days at the Chosen Prime, and I'm just waiting on some other stuff to hit to ship it. But that's already coming out, and that was actually not supposed to be out till late
my
December.
cup hasn't showed. He's one that I pre-ordered, and I did pre-order that through Big Bad. And I know you had told me he had dropped in a few other places, so I've been expecting him at any moment, honestly.
Yeah, you got the X Transbots one, right? He's actually a pretty good one. I think he's one of the hardest ones to transform, but so is the Fans Toys version of that, and they just don't make it easy to transform Cup, unfortunately. If they do, he doesn't look anything like Cup.
I just want him to look like Cup in robot form. He'll go in my Autobots section that's already fucking crammed together. So, he's not getting back into car mode or El Camino space mode or whatever it is. So, no.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Other toy news, though, Super 7, after a 2-week delay, finally unveiled Wave 5 of Thundercats Ultimates. The lineup, Bengali, one of the last remaining Thundercats, which is one of my favorites, and I was very excited to see him. The Mirror Lion-O, which is the doppelganger version of Lion-O. Hammerhand, the pirate, and the mutant Vulture Man. Now, I heard rumor that the reason this got delayed is because they were trying to do a 5th piece in the wave. So, normally they only do 4 figures. With some of the other stuff, they started doing like a 5th piece, like a Dinosaur for Power Rangers, or Monstar's Throne Transformation Chamber Throne for the Silverhawks waves. The rumor was that they were trying to work a 5th piece into this, whether it was some kind of, maybe it was a mutant nosediver or something, some kind of vehicle or something into it. But they couldn't get it ready in time.
Maybe the sarcophagus for Mum Ra.
Maybe that. They didn't ever say what it was. I was trying to think of things it could be, and the sarcophagus is probably the best option for that. But the rumor was that they were trying to get that ready, and it wasn't ready in time to show when they wanted to show it 2 weeks ago. And then they got around to this point, and they're like, we're just going to call it on Monday and say we're going to put it out there this Monday, and if that's ready, it goes in the wave. If not, we're going on ahead with that. And I don't know if that's true, but that's where I've read multiple websites where that's, they have heard that rumor, and that's kind of what they're going with. That's why it was delayed.
That would be far more positive than they were wondering if this is the last wave they'll actually be able to get out, and they're trying to get one more figure in there, which would worry me.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised.
Wave, it's kind of 50-50 because Bengali looks great. His head sculpts are a little, I don't know. Those are some of the first ones to me look a little more cartoony than I would have cared for. But the fact that they come with the forge, the sword of almost where he reforges it, all of that's really cool. I mean,
and you mentioned that yesterday because as most people probably know, we do talk outside of just doing this podcast, right? So you mentioned yesterday that the head looked a little off. So I actually went and pulled up some stills from the show, and I actually turned on the show because it is on Hulu for anyone who wants to go back and rewatch it. And I turned it on and just caught some clips of him, and it actually looks a lot like him. The only problem I saw with it is he actually has 2 little side horns on his hair that kind of stick out. And no matter what scene he's in, and then he's got a middle one. You know how a tiger has just the 2 sides. He has 2 sides and then a middle one to distinguish him a little bit. I don't see those 2 side pieces on the head, but I see the center piece. And it may just be the angle I saw the pictures of.
Tiger head and retool it a little bit.
No, because Tiger's got those 2 side ones, so they didn't even use that. They gave him the middle spike in his hair, and it's like, I mean, it still looks like his face, but
something
the hair
just seemed to miss. I wasn't sure what it was. It was just something seemed to miss.
Yeah.
Vulture Man looks really great. I will say that.
Yeah. I'm surprised though that there's only one Thundercat or ally in this, because usually they do 2 good guys, 2 bad guys. I was expecting Bengali and maybe Willa, or what was the one? I can't think of her name now. The officer that they work with, the space police officer. I was thinking maybe.
Yes, I know.
I was thinking her or Hachiman or somebody, but we actually got 3 villains out of this with the Mirror Lion-O, the Hammerhead, and Vulture Man, and it's like, wow, that's a
and I rewatched that episode the other day just to kind of refresh myself on it. He's only Mirror Lion-O for like just a few minutes. It is like literally just a few moments at the end of the show.
Well, you wonder if they did it just because it's easy right now, because they're having such a hard time getting these out, and that's just a repaint. And they're already producing a Lion-O because they re-released Lion-O and Panthro that are supposed to be coming out, end of the year here because of the Thunder Tank. So maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I will say that when I got my looting the other day, the Sly figure, he has me wanting to open my Thundercats. That is an incredible looking figure. When you pull the top off and look at him through the display, he looks great. He's probably the best looking one to me out of the entire set so far.
I have just because I'm a big fan of Bengali and I liked him, I almost ordered 2 of him just to have one open. That would be the only one I've opened, but $54 a piece I can't, or $54.99. Truthfully, I can't do it. So
that's pricey.
yeah,
That is pricey.
But since we're running some, we got a couple more news things. I'll try to run through some of these a little bit quickly. IDW, comic book news IDW with G.I. Joe, since we segued to that straight from Thundercats. They've actually got a mini-series coming out that goes back to the 1980s A Real American Hero cartoon. And this mini-series is set in the cartoon. It's not comic book time or comic book setting that fits the cartoon. This is actually somewhere along the timeline of the cartoon itself. And it's a mini-series that fits inside there. So, they wanted to make it as much as like an episode as they could, and they're even drawing the characters in that animated style versus the more comic book realistic looking style that they've used in all their other books. I don't normally buy the G.I. Joe books, but I think I'm gonna buy that one just to give it a read and see what it's like.
It's got some appeal to it, some allure.
Yeah, and then also in comic news, I saw that Star Wars is after several years of being, I don't want to say exclusively Marvel because they do still do some books outside of Marvel that are kind of more their kid line of books. They're repartnering with Dark Horse to put out some other issues as well. They're still going to be doing Marvel from what I understand, but they're also going to be doing with Dark Horse. They're going to say, hey, here, you tell a story in a different era of Star Wars. Like if we're telling the High Republic era in Marvel, you can do somewhere between the High Republic and the Battle of Yavin or something. So, and Dark Horse had a long history.
When you do that, and is it going to be canon or not canon? Because they're saying that everything Dark Horse has done in the past is no longer canon, and what Marvel doing is. So
I understand
where does this lie?
These I understand are going to be canon, but everything they're doing has to be approved by Disney and Star Wars, of course. But they're saying it's going to be canon. I'll be curious to see how they are and what stories they tell. I don't think they're going to let them use any major characters. Like, you can't tell an Obi-Wan story unless we really approve it, but you can tell a story of Luminara Unadali or somebody. Just pick a different Jedi and tell a story if you want to. But they're saying they're going to be mostly miniseries from what I saw. It's not any ongoing books. It's all miniseries, and they're all going to be canon. But I don't think it starts till next year, so we'll have to kind of wait and see. But I like a lot of the old Dark Horse stuff, and they had a long history with Star Wars. But again, they're no longer canon, so we'll see how this new version goes, especially when they're getting so many directives from Disney and Star Wars. But coming out of that, we've also got one more thing before we get to our major topics. But video game news. Have you seen this WB Multiverses video game?
I have not. I think me and you were discussing. You sent me some notes on it, and it sounds interesting. But
yeah, so for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's going to be a 2-on-2 fighter game. You can play solo or online. It is a free to play on consoles as well as PC, but it's the entire WB multiverse. So you can play. They're going to have characters from every property. So you got Looney Tunes, you've got Bugs Bunny, you've got Lola Bunny from Space Jam, you've got Scooby-Doo and Shaggy are in here from Scooby-Doo. DC Comics, it's got all the DC comic characters, and you have, you can use Superman, you can use Batman, and they're using the characters, the voice actors from Justice League Unlimited and Justice League animated series. So like Kevin Conroy is doing Batman. So, you could have Kevin Conroy, Batman, partner up with Shaggy to do battle with Arya Stark from Game of Thrones, and or Bugs Bunny from Looney Tunes.
I just don't know, dude. To me that's almost like when I read that Power Rangers is doing a shared universe with all the other Hasbro properties for Netflix. I was like, why? I don't want to see them with Dungeons and Dragons or any of this other stuff. But to me, you can kind of convolute things. I'd far rather have seen, I guess, actual Game of Thrones fighting game or a DC fighting game. I mean, I don't care to play with Shaggy. I don't care to play with Fred and or none of them. I mean, there's certain things. I mean, it'd be pretty cool if you had Snuck Supernatural in on there, but you know, I don't know. It'll have its niche.
I will probably give it a try since it's a free to play. It depends on who all's in there and if I really and how the gameplay is as to whether I'll stick with it. And again, I think they're starting with a very base. Here's all these characters we're starting with, but they plan to continually grow and add more to it just because they had the opportunity to. With a multiverse game like
But
that,
did
you
they
can
make it
actually
a
add
free to
characters
play
in.
and then you buy the characters deal?
Quite possibly, which would be, I'll play it for the free characters to see how it is, and then I will no longer buy anything or play anymore because I'm
Yeah.
too cheap to try that.
I can see them giving you like 6 characters, 3 actually being fun, 3 being lame, and then we're doing the Mortal Kombat every so often. We release 4 more characters at $9.99,
Yeah,
or something to that effect.
I can see that happening. We'll have to wait and see. I don't think it's even coming out until mid to late next year. I didn't see a date on it when I looked at it. But yeah, wanted to share it in case anybody's interested. And since we're talking
While
about,
we're on games, this came in the mail today.
ah,
PlayStation 5, Guardians of the Galaxy, caught it on sale on Amazon for like $29. I mean, it just dropped a few weeks ago. We'll give it a spin this coming Thanksgiving holiday and give everybody a kind of brief overview of it next week. But
yeah,
I'm really
and
excited. It just came in the mail today, and
I don't have mine here, but I actually picked it up this past weekend too because I sent you when it was on Amazon. I actually bought it from
yeah,
Best Buy because I had a $5 rewards points plus it was $29.99 there. So I was like, score, I'm gonna get it for $24.99. I'm gonna save $5, and I went and
exactly.
picked it up Saturday, and I haven't even had a chance to play it yet because after that I had to put together some new furniture and stuff at the house. So I never got a chance to try it, but I plan to hopefully sometime this week. But since we're talking about games and fighting games, that kind of takes us into our topics this week. We were going to talk about Survivor Series and wrestling. But before we jump too far into that, just to quickly mention, there were some more WWE releases last week. A couple of surprising ones. A lot of them characters I have no idea who they even are. But one of the big ones coming out of NXT was their Hit Row team. Apparently, there was a lot of backstage heat on those guys, and they were like, "Yeah, just
They
go."
just got moved to SmackDown. They were pushing the stool out of them, man. It just
Apparently, the one that they thought was the most talented and probably the breakout star, Top Dollar, I think was his name. Apparently, he had a lot of backstage complaints and heat against him in NXT and in SmackDown, and they're like, "Let's just cut the losses with him." And they're like, "Well, since he's the most talented, if we're gonna get rid of him, just do away with the rest of them too."
well, he was the guy from the Buried Treasures WWE thing that was on A&E where they were going and finding all these lost artifacts and things that
I
all the
was wondering if
superstars
that
like.
was him.
Yes, it was that one. He
Oh,
seemed like a really lovable guy on there, but I mean, it's
yeah,
when the
I
camera's
don't.
shut in your face, anybody can seem lovable,
Yeah, and we
except
don't
for me.
know, what happened backstage, but I saw them, Drake Maverick, which was a little bit of surprise after they fired and rehired him the last year. And then another one that surprised me was John Morrison because they had just gotten him back and they pushed him so much, and he
Johnny
was
Drip
in,
Drip.
and he
What
was
the hell,
actually,
Johnny Drip Drip?
for one of their more talented guys, and he was also really big in their WrestleMania year this year with the where they always work with some celebrity. Him and the Miz working with Bad Bunny, they pushed the crap out of those guys. And now I know Miz is off doing his Dancing with the Stars or whatever, but I'm just surprised that they let Morrison go like that, especially after bringing him back and making such a big deal out of it. But yeah, after seeing all those releases, I kind
Is
of had to
Miz out
wonder.
hurt? Is that what the deal is with him right now, or is he all filming
Uh,
something? Or
he's been on Dancing with the Stars.
okay,
Yeah, he's been on there competing. I think he's actually eliminated now, but he hasn't come back because I'm sure that they do. I think they got. I don't watch that show, but I'm pretty sure that the last show they probably all bring every character or every participant back and let them do something in the finale or something. But that's where he's been for a while now. Um, but after all those firings, I kind of wonder, are they even going to have enough people to have a Survivor Series this year? Because we keep firing people every other week. And,
the logic is making you wonder, like, what is Vince up to? But then again, I mean, after watching the Thanksgiving tradition, I wonder what Vince is thinking, anyways.
Yeah, so that's kind of our first topic for our focus topic for tonight, right? What was the Survivor Series? Let's do a very quick review over it. So if you're all right with it, I'll run down the card and just announce who was in the matches and who won, and then we could talk about the show itself. But your pre-show match was your Intercontinental. This was the brand versus brand for the Thanksgiving tradition, which I am not a fan of, but we'll talk about that some more in a minute. But
the brand supremacy doesn't sell me.
No. But the pre-show was Intercontinental Champ Shinsuke Nakamura against Damian Priest, the U.S. Champ. Nakamura won by disqualification, so basically Priest beat himself. This was one of the only 2 SmackDown wins that we got this entire show, which is something I do want to touch on in a minute. For the women's championship, Becky Lynch defeated Charlotte Flair. So again, a Raw win over SmackDown. Men's Raw team beat SmackDown's team with Seth Rollins being the sole survivor. Then we got to the women's 5-on-5 elimination match, and Bianca Belair for Raw was the sole survivor for Raw once again. Almost won this battle royal they had, which was supposed to be a 25-year anniversary of The Rock, and it was a 25-man battle royal. I think they just couldn't figure out what else to do for a match, so they threw this in here, and Omos won, being another Raw win. The tag team champions against each other, RK Bro against the Usos, and once again, Raw pulls out a win with RK Bro. And then you finally get a SmackDown win on the main show because Roman Reigns defeated Big E in the main event, which was kind of expected. There was no way they were going to let Big E defeat Roman Reigns after the way they pushed him for the last 400 plus days, however long he's had that title belt. But in this entire show, SmackDown wins 2 matches, one of them being a pre-show, and it was a disqualification. So the guy beat himself for them, and then they won one main show.
What is the logic behind that? I mean, just basic booking 101. You don't have a schmoz finish unless it's going to lead to a payoff later. These 2 won't touch each other again. And I didn't watch all of Raw this week, so I don't know if maybe Damian Priest continued his downward spiral into being a heel. But if you're going to pick up heat by getting a heel type disqualification loss, you want to get it when you're in a program with someone long term. Nakamura is a guy who they strapped the fucking rocket to just a few years ago. He won the Royal Rumble. You really thought this man had a chance to win the title. The shit on him at Mania. And it's just been a downward spiral for him. And then, like, every so often they'll dust him off, throw this little Intercontinental title on him or a crown and say, okay, go out there and be somebody. And he comes to the ring with some moron with a guitar. It's like Honky Tonk Man 2.0. It's just awful.
So before we go, because I have a question for you, but before I get to that question, why in the crap does he have this dude with the guitar who has basically stolen Elias's gimmick, and Elias was 10 times the talent on the mic and in the ring as this dude?
Elias made that work.
He
Rick
did.
Boggs is the drizzling shits.
Yes, and why is he the new Elias, but Elias is still around somewhere, walking around in a cemetery or wherever he was the last time we saw him, burning all of his shit? But
is he still doing that?
I don't know. I haven't seen him.
I don't watch Raw at all anymore. I watch SmackDown. I'm wondering if that's why they let Raw defeat SmackDown so wholeheartedly, because SmackDown's kicking their ass in the ratings every week. So
let me bring up my question to you, because that kind of leads directly into it. How did Fox, who's paying this buku money and wanting this to be their flagship show for WWE? Now I know that NBC bought a lot of their stuff, bought their whole streaming thing and put them on Peacock, and they've got this huge long-standing deal with them, but Fox is paying them to make SmackDown the premier show. So how does WWE or Fox justify the fact that for 2 years in a row, Raw has decimated SmackDown? Last year, Raw swept everything in Survivor Series. They won every match. This year, SmackDown at least won 2, one by disqualification, so did they really win it or they just got lucky and then they won the main event? But for 2 years, SmackDown hasn't done anything. How does this not make this show look extremely weak? And how do you justify this?
Well, I'm sure last year they were able to pull the whole, SmackDown dominated the year prior. We're going to rotate it back and forth. Because the year prior, I want to say SmackDown
No,
like just
actually,
shit out of them.
it would have been the year before that. 2019 was the year that NXT participated in the Survivor Series. And NXT won all the matches. They swept everybody. They swept it like 4-2 or something for all the matches, because that was the year
So
that
we're
3
years removed from
Yeah.
SmackDown being the dominant brand.
Yeah, and the whole reason NXT was even involved in 2019 was because half the roster got stuck in Saudi Arabia trying to leave Crown Jewel, and they were stuck on the plane, remember, for 2 or 3 days and couldn't leave. So they needed to start the build up to the show. They're like, just throw NXT on there because that's all the people we got, and let them run roughshod over whoever's here in town, and then they can participate in Survivor Series, and then they push them to win.
Yeah, that disgusted me. Oh my God, you got your developmental kids out here just making your main stars look like morons.
I did not mind it. I didn't mind it on that build-up show when most of the main stars were often still stuck in Saudi Arabia. But when you get to the main Survivor Series, they just ran over everybody. That's like, really? These guys are
well, it's one thing to have them show up on the show and come out here and do a dastardly attack and get the upper hand. Okay, I'm fine with that. You got to build your heat. No problem. But you got to get the other guy has to get the payback at some point. If not, you just, what have you done?
Well, if they show up on the show and they beat up R-Truth, who cares? But if they show up on the show and beat up Roman Reigns, how do you justify this?
Yeah, and then Roman Reigns loses to whoever their champion was at the time. I mean, makes sense.
But I don't understand how Fox hasn't thrown up a red flag. So you've made us lose for the last 2 years. Because in 2018, I don't think they were actually on Fox for SmackDown at that time, if I remember right.
Yeah.
They might have been, but if they weren't, it's like, okay,
they were still on USA.
So how do you justify that now when you're saying our competing network, you're giving them all the wins? Break it in half. Give us half, give them half. And if one gets one over the other, that's fine.
Yeah, because Fox is actually pretty hands-on. Like they have stepped in a couple of times and said, "Hey, look, your ratings aren't where we want to be. Bump them up." And they, have people kind of like Dick Ebersol did with Saturday Night Main Event for NBC. He would help produce the show to make sure it was what NBC wanted. The Fox executives are kind of along the same way with it. They were willing to absorb some of the costs to, get CM Punk back into the fold earlier this year before he went to, AEW, because they said, hey, we want him on Friday nights. We'll pay his contract. Just get him on Friday nights. And McMahon,
and that makes sense. I perfectly get that. I just don't understand how they could let that go the way it did. And again, it's not like it just, okay, we agreed to it this year, next year we'll get payback. No, you lost last year too. And last year it was a clean sweep. You won nothing. We'll give you one match this year.
Maybe they're just happy with their ratings and they don't care.
Might be. And I guess another part of it too is you got to wonder too, is does it play into it the fact that the pay-per-view is where this is happening at? The pay-per-view is on Peacock, which is NBC owned. So maybe they just got to placate them, make them happy here, and maybe Fox is like, well, you're on there, so you can do whatever you want to. We don't care. We don't watch their channel. But it's just hard to see that they would be that willing to take that loss like that.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't think I would either. But, even pulling away from that, thinking about the overall of how this show was, what was your opinion of the show overall?
This show was El Libre. I'm talking about the sole positive note of this show was Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. They stole the show, hands down. It was a 5-star match.
Oh, yeah.
Great match. The finish seemed a little rushed, like maybe there was something a little more supposed to have happened. But for whatever reason, we got what we got. I enjoyed the match. I was like, okay, you got the gals jerking the curtain here, but that sets get the hot crowd, so to speak. And then it just goes downhill from there. I mean, the Weed Queen wins. I mean, almost a star wins the Battle Royal. The Rock Battle Royal that The Rock's not even there for. I mean, when Andre the Giant's not there for his Battle Royal, he's fucking dead. You had this Battle Royal in the remembrance of the 25th anniversary of The Rock debuting, and he's not even on site.
So
not a cameo Skype, nothing. I mean, you could at least had him Skype something.
And I think we will touch on this a little bit too, like the different formats of the show in the past versus now. But in the build up to this show, that was never mentioned that I remember in any of the build up until like, oh, today's the day of the show. Guess what? He premiered on the show 25 years ago. And it's like now the whole show built around.
About it the Friday before the pay-per-view, last Friday. I want to say it was. I read about it on social media somewhere. Was hey, they're doing this, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. So it kind of makes you speculate. Hey, is The Rock going to be there? Get some buzz going because they're teasing this Roman Reigns Rock thing,
and that's exactly how they used it. But all the reports today came out, and I don't know if you saw any of them, but I was checking some news earlier right before we recorded, and there were several reports from several different verified sources said that WWE wanted him there for this originally. But they asked him months ago.
In quarantine on the set he's at.
Yeah, he's in Australia shooting.
Yeah,
I think he's off in New Zealand or Australia or somewhere shooting there. But they knew he wasn't going to be there months ago. So why even promote this other than trying to get some buy-in because they know they don't have enough power to do it right now with what they have. I'll tell you,
it didn't make sense. It was poor booking. I mean, it just. I wonder if I'm assuming that's why the IC and US champion was fighting on the pre-show, which if it were me, I would have had that lame ass battle royal on the pre-show. There was really no major stars in it other than AJ Styles, and he was eliminated.
And I'm surprised he was even in it because he's been out sick for weeks. He's been out on medical leave or something. So I was like, where did he come from all of a sudden? But I watched the show and my overall impressions of it was hard to watch. And that's the nicest thing I can say. I thought some of the matches were decent. Like, the women's match with Becky and Charlotte was great. The 5-on-5 elimination matches, the men's wasn't too bad, but there was some areas of it that got real sloppy with trying to do stuff. But they gave you some nice things that you don't normally see. Like Jeff Hardy actually got a comeback as the big baby face in the match. And it's like, you guys shit on him half the time, but now you gave him something. I'm all right with that, but it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. It was just decent. But there was no.
I think the only other match I give any kind of ranking to was I gave RK Bro and the Usos about 3 stars. And had anyone been tagging with Orton other than the Riddler, I would have probably given it about a good 4 stars because the match itself had good psychology. It was a good match. Randy Orton broke most pay-per-view matches record, which is, hey, hats off to you, brother. It was actually a good match. And the Usos, they finally have come together. I know a lot of people have viewed them as the superior tag team for the WWE for several years now. And for a long time, they were just 2 of them island boys stuck together, and it always seemed like every time they got to the edge of a pinnacle of getting really to that, edge, one would get hurt, the other would get tossed by the wayside. Yeah, or DUIs, and this last go around, Jay actually made it work. I mean, he progressed and got better with Jimmy out. Yeah, Roman elevated him, and now Jimmy looks like the curtain jerker when they come out there because he always seems to be the poor bastard that takes the fall, or has to do the comedy sketch or whatever they're doing. But they're finally a unit that it's like, okay, see what you got here, But
yeah, it is. So, like I said, the whole show though was just hard to watch. I mean, to your point, there's some of the matches were decent, and the activity in the match was good and very well executed. But the show itself had no real storylines. There was no build to anything really, other than Roman and Big E, and that wasn't even much of a build. It was like 2 weeks worth of activity, and it was hard to sit there for 4.5 hours and watch this show. I got sleepy. I mean, it was hard to just stay awake through the thing, and even while you had a match that was great, like Roman and Big E, Roman takes 10 minutes to get to the ring. By the time he was in the ring, I was dozing off again. I was like, man, get your butt there and get this started.
Big E is extremely hard to take serious as a world champion. I'm sorry. They spent too much time with him, Woods, and Kofi as a New Day as a comedy act. You know what? I can view them as a comedy act and a winning tag team. Because let's just be honest, the way that their WWF tag team wrestling has always been, you can put the ha-ha in those matches and the guy still pull it out or whatever. I can't take this guy seriously as a dominating world champion. There is no fucking way I would have ended Bobby Lashley, who comes across as a if you hear that Bobby Lashley Roman Reigns months ago, I'd have bought it all day long. Instead, you let Big E beat him. And as soon as you let Big E beat Bobby, then you have Roman come in and squash Bobby a few times where you spent a year building the man up to give him a few month reign, dominant reign at that as champion, just to have him shit all over. It goes back to poor booking. They don't know how to do it. It's like once Pat Patterson passed away, any logical booking they had just vanished.
Well, that's because the only thing left there booking anything is TV writers. It's not wrestling writers. It's not wrestling, students of the wrestling game.
They're so mixed up in the wins don't matter. You've got to be able to believe that someone is. Why do you think Goldberg got over is like he did? It wasn't because of his technical prowess. Because the man won every damn week in dominant fashion. He won. I mean, Mike Tyson, boxing wise, was he the greatest? No. But that son of a bitch could knock your head off your shoulders. You were intimidated before you got to the ring. And he had that money look to him. So he was dominant. And so you're not going to tell me that even in, professional wrestling, where the outcomes are everyone knows are scripted, the wins and losses still matter. That's one thing that I will give AEW credit for. They keep track of it. They got a record right there. This guy's 12-2 this year. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I've seen that with him. I always wondered how accurate that was because, like you said with Goldberg, he had to win to get over like he did. Right now, they added to that win, so for every one win he got, somehow he added like 5 or 10 wins to his records. Like
he had house shit during the week, Monster. I mean,
he won
somebody in Des Moines.
He won a match on TV today. He's 31-0. He was just at 10 yesterday. What happened? But I always wonder.
The work, Monster. He's putting in the work.
But that's good booking as well as accurate wrestling storytelling. Like, okay, we can say that this guy won all these matches because we have house shows. To your point, who's going to know he didn't? We'll just say that he could have wrestled 10 times yesterday.
No one but the 35 fans that showed up to WCW house shows in the 90s. So, I mean.
Yeah, but speaking about booking, I think talking about that kind of takes us into our second topic here, which is, the format of the Survivor Series. Survivor Series is one of the big 4 shows for WWE, right? It's Mania, Royal Rumble, Survivor Series, SummerSlam. That was always the big 4 for them. At least in my experience, right? And Survivor Series is the Thanksgiving tradition, right? For first 8 years, the show was only the Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving night. If you go back and
Thanksgiving Eve or Thanksgiving night, yes.
If you go back and look at the history of wrestling, Thanksgiving is one of the most profitable. When they had the territories, that was one of the most profitable nights to ever have matches because they could sell 2 or 3 times the tickets and have the same show multiple times and make a ton of money. You hear a lot of the historians talk about how big Thanksgiving was. And I know in 95, 96 is when they changed to being the Sunday before. And I think some of that had to do with, people staying home more. Plus, you got this Black Friday shopping that kicks in now. We didn't have that back then. Those things kind of pick up, so it changes people's perspective on what they're going to do for that Thanksgiving Day or the day right after. So I think that changed, and that's why they moved to the Sunday before. But there was a different format for how Survivor Series worked. Now, still 5-on-5 elimination matches was the idea of Survivor Series. Now, was it always that? No, you had a few years deviated, like 98, I think it was, where they had a tournament to figure out who was going to get the world title, right? There was the world title was vacant. You didn't have a 5-on-5 match that year. I think it was a full tournament, if I remember right. And there's a year where you had
That was 98, yes, sir, because 97 was a screw job, and the 98 was
Yeah.
when Rock broke out and he won the title, and they tried to do the screw job finish as a, backhanded jab at, the year prior.
Yeah, and I think that, you don't have to, the idea of Survivor Series should be some kind of 5-on-5 elimination. I think there was a year where they even had tag team elimination in there too, and it might have only been once or twice, but that 5-on-5
in '87 when it started,
Series.
your big thing was to get Andre and Hogan in the ring again without having them one-on-one.
Yeah.
And each team, had a theme or whatever. Honestly, for some reason, I thought that all of the original years, I thought they all done the Supreme Survivor type deal where like the winners progressed to the last match. I didn't realize until this weekend that only 1990 was the year they done that, where teams, winners went to the end to the final match. And honestly, that's probably my favorite of any of them. Which, I mean, that's the year the Undertaker, debuted as well. But
yeah, and
it was really cool.
I thought
to
they had
see
that more often too. I didn't think it was every year, but I thought they had that more than just once. Until you said that the other day, I didn't realize that.
I honestly thought at least the first 4 or 5 were this way, but it was only 1990 they done that, and it was really cool because other than the fact that Tino Santana made the final team, which was a head scratcher, But you had Hogan and Warrior there, and that was the goal was to get Warrior, people behind the Warrior a little more because he was, fizzling as champion a little bit, and then the odds are stacked against him because Teddy DiBiase's got 6 people on his team by the end of it. Because the entire Visionaries team survived, which was I think first and only time ever that this happened.
But talking about some of those, I think one of the big things that's different in the show was how those teams came together. Right, those teams had a purpose for being together. That's what Survivor Series was. It wasn't just, to jump ahead a little bit, it wasn't just this brand versus brand thing. It was, okay, I'm a heel. I'm working with another heel who's against these faces, and I'm going to put a couple more people with us. I'm going to count some people into helping us, and we'll help them out with their enemy, or we have a common theme, or maybe even it was a friends or family type thing, like if you had the Heart Foundation together or something along those lines, right? There was a reason for everybody to be there. There was common purpose for being together. And even a few 10 years ago when they had the Nexus and stuff, and you had some of those Survivor Series, you still had people together to fight the Authority or whatever it was. There was still a reason for the team to be a team. I much prefer that because I want to see them trying to work together. This whole,
like, you had the Hulkamaniacs versus the Natural Disasters. You had the Warriors, and the teams made sense. It would make sense that the Warriors would be Ultimate Warrior, the modern day Warrior Kerry Von Erich, the Road Warriors, versus a team of people that they were all feuding with at the time. Or you had Jake the Snake Roberts on one side with his team of pythons or whatever they were, versus Rick the Model's team, who had blinded Jake the Snake a few months prior. He said there with the one dead eye during the match, and it was that they made sense. Or Dusty Rhodes' team versus the $1 Million team. They made sense, and they were entertaining. They told a story, and you could progress the story further afterwards, or it could be the end cap of the story. One of the two.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Like you said, the biggest thing is it made sense right together. Now you're doing a brand versus brand. And you know what? When you first split the brand, okay, or even if you had back with the WWF versus the Alliance and you do that, okay, it's brand, WWF versus WCW. That makes sense. Or the first year you split SmackDown and Raw, you say, let's fight for brand supremacy. But now you're doing that. You've been doing that every year since 2016. If I remember right, since 2016, it's been brand on brand, and even one year they added in the third brand of NXT, like we talked earlier. But what's the purpose for them to be? There's no loyalty to the brand. I mean, why am I going to do
draft a month ago?
Yes, thank you.
Literally a month ago.
How do you have any brand loyalty?
Oh man, I'm bleeding red or I'm bleeding blue at this point. But you don't give a damn. And it's one thing if you got like a $1 million man type, character on one side or the other. It's like, or maybe they even had the commissioners being like, "Hey, look, if you pull together for Team Raw, everybody gets a $1 million bonus or something." Some bullshit kayfabe bonus. But the thing is, you got the same commissioners for both shows.
Yeah, it
I
wasn't
mean,
even.
you
It wasn't
literally,
even
you literally
bragging
have
rights.
DeVille and Pierce on both shows. They don't give a damn.
It wasn't even
I
bragging
mean,
rights. It's like when you had Shane versus Stephanie's team, and one of them wins, and it's like, "Hi, I get to go home and brag about this in front of everybody." So there's no kind
or
of
what?
loyalty to this.
Yeah, or what should have been 25 years ago when we had the match you were talking about with the so-called Alliance versus WWF, and you had more WCW guys on the fucking WWF team and more WWF guys on the WCW team. And it's like,
Yeah,
I look back at that recently and I was like, I didn't watch the match. There's a lot of star power in the match, but then you look at the WCW Alliance team, it's like, there's more WWF talent here. Then you look over here at the WWF side, and you've got guys like Jericho. You had the Undertaker. There was one more that was shit. It escapes me now, but he was actually a very WCW guy. And it was like, and then also, The Rock has the WCW championship on the WWF side. Stone Cold's on the opposite side with the WWF title.
yeah. So it makes sense why you're fighting, right? You're fighting for who's going to be in charge of this whole place, who's going to run roughshod over the others. With Raw and SmackDown, you all work for the same place, and this whole thing of can they coexist? The first time you do that, it's kind of interesting. Or if you have one person on the team that you fear might turn on the rest of them, that's one thing. I kind of prefer it more when you don't have that. Like you talked about with the Warriors earlier, everybody was on the same page. We're not going to turn on each other.
Yeah.
But this whole thing of can they coexist, and then they push that even further. Like, can they get along at all? Like Kevin Owens walking out on the team the other night. What the hell, man? I paid to see you wrestle
What
team
purpose did
versus
it
team.
serve? Did they even do anything on Raw with that?
I haven't finished it yet. I don't know. I started Raw
I mean,
earlier today, but I haven't finished watching it.
in the first hour, you missed nothing. I can tell you that. I watched about the first hour and I cut it off. Matter of fact, when they announced that Austin Theory was who stole the golden gobbledygooker egg from Vince McMahon because he wanted to take a fucking selfie with it, and that he was getting a title match, I cut off right there.
see, the shame of that is
episode on.
He's such a good talent too. He could be so much more. And they brought him up once before, and he looked better when they brought him up before. Now they brought him back, and he just looks goofy. I liked him better when he came up with Zelina Vega and Angel Garza and stuff. He was much better. But but going back to the show and this whole thing of can they coexist, I don't need to see that, and I'm tired of seeing it. And not only does it say can they coexist, is are they going to break down and have a fight between each other, but are they even going to work together at all? And it's like, why are we doing this? Why are we taking it to this point? I don't have any loyalty to this brand, so no, I'm not going to coexist. Why would I go out there and put my body on the line to get a win for you?
Laid out, tired idea.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense. Like I said, if we're on the same team, but we don't like each other, and it's all about brand supremacy, but I don't really care about the brand anyway, why would I go put my body on the line for it? Screw that. I'm going to put my body on the line when I got a championship match. I ain't doing it for bragging rights against the other show. Why?
Yeah. I would rather see it come down to it. If you're going to have to do it this way, have it start off with SmackDown versus Raw matches. The winners progress to the final match, and whoever's a part of the winning team can, whoever survives, all get a, demand they can be met. Whether it be like, say the Usos were on there, and one of them won, they can demand a tag team title shot, or if little Jody's on there and he wants an Intercontinental World title shot on his show,
well,
something to this effect.
Then
there's something to
to
strive, reason to want to be there.
And I think with this one too, just watching this and talking about this, how they put them together as the brands and stuff. Not only was that not working because these guys had just gotten there, like you said, less than it was just over a month ago. It was like October 17th, I think, was the day that the split, the changes happened in the rosters. But you did that, and then you went to Saudi Arabia and hyped up all this stuff for Crown Jewel. Then you came back and you did nothing to hype the Survivor Series until like 2 weeks before. And you didn't even announce the teams on the show or make people qualify for the teams. You just announced them on Twitter. Oh, the crap. how is this going to make me have any brand loyalty? You can't even give me a shot at fighting to fight for my team. You got to actually just give it to me on Twitter. And I don't even know.
That I had on Twitter.
Yeah,
whoever
and
gets
I don't
most
even.
retweets, you're on the team.
I don't even know how they. I don't think they even had a plan for that either, though, because if you watched, as soon as they put those teams together, they kept changing people on the teams too. It wasn't just like, okay, here's the team, and that went. You changed out 2 people on Team Raw in like a week. So did you really not have a good plan for this, or was that the plan all? It makes it seem like you really didn't have an idea of how you wanted to put these teams together anyway, which goes back to they should have a common purpose. But okay, Little Mysterio, you're off the team. Here's Bobby Lashley. Big Mysterio or older Mysterio, you're off the team. Here's Austin Theory. What the crap? Why? Why did we do that? Why did we even put them on the team in the first place? We're just going to replace them. If you do that and it happens because one person gets hurt or needs to be out, or you have a storyline that kind of feeds
that makes sense.
But there was none of that. It just was like, you don't fit anymore. We're getting rid of you. And
it's from what I've been reading online. They said that Vince is like changing stuff on the fly every week, like to where shows will be at least semi-planned out month in advance. Like they knew the Mania prior what the next Mania's build was, as far as like we want to go with Austin next year. He's going to be our guy. We're going to start building to this. They don't know who they're going to have in next month's pay-per-view. They don't know.
They don't know who's going to be working there next month.
Raw is it anymore? Oh yeah, because they might get a future endeavors between now and Friday, and because they're cutting costs, but yet they just had a WWF World Title made the size of a damn half a football field for WrestleMania promo.
So
I promise you, it costs more than some of those contracts they just cut.
Oh yeah, and I got to ask a question too. Even though nobody who was recently cut in the last couple of weeks was actually announced for either team, you got to wonder how much that fed into some of the changes at the last minute too. It's like, okay, we're gonna put Ray and Dominic on here. Well, we fired these other people. Maybe we need them in a different match. So let's take them out of that and put somebody else in there. Or let's put Austin Theory in there since we've got him lying around and we haven't figured out what to do with him. Maybe he was going to feud with, Hit Row or somebody. So let's just throw him in there. Whatever the case, it seems like it was just very haphazard put together, especially with no build. And they were more interested in getting a build for Crown Jewel because they knew what that check they were fixing to get from that was than they were about let's work on one of our big 4 shows. No, let's forget it.
That card is. Well, the thing is, Crown Jewel has become a more stacked card. It's almost as stacked as much as WrestleMania, honestly. The only thing is, you get a semi build for it, but there's typically no ramifications coming out of the show.
Oh no.
Usually, there's not a title change, and if something semi big does happen there, it's not followed up on. So, I mean, it's like, and it's on a fucking Friday afternoon when people are still at work. So why bother? But yet you put more money into that, which I get it. The Saudi princes, they put a lot of money in Vince's pocket, and
and they want the big stars. Yeah. So they get it.
What was it 2 years ago? They didn't realize Ultimate Warrior was dead, and they really was like pushing for Ultimate Warrior to show.
Yeah, something like that.
Vince, and they finally the like, hey, look, the guy died a couple years ago, right? I mean, he's not with us any longer. I don't think he's gonna make this triumphant return down the aisle.
So I think I had one more question about how this show was built, and the change in the formatting, where it's the brand on brand stuff and all. How do you think this affects how they set up other pay-per-views? Because Survivor Series is the only one that's the 5-on-5 elimination type thing, but again, being one of the big 4s and seeing how they built it and what they've done with the way the matches are supposed to be laid out, what do you think it does to the other shows?
I'll be honest, I don't think I don't think they care as much about the pay-per-view any longer, the concept of pay-per-view any longer, because they don't get the money off the pay-per-view like what they once did. Back when pay-per-view, even when you were $19, and then the regular 3-hour ones were $29. I mean, they got beyond that. I mean, WrestleMania, of course, and then the big shows got to be, on up there. But I'm just saying, even if you were still getting $19 a pay-per-view, okay, you won't pay-per-view buys up. If it's just a subscription cost, if I say, okay, G, Monster, I'm going to give you $10,000 right now. And for doing so, I want you to give me 10 shows over the course of the next year. You don't make any dollar more or less, depending on how many viewers you have, how many likes, subscriptions, whatever, so forth and so on. Do you honestly give two shits who clicks and like and subscribe and shares? No.
No.
But if I tell you, hey, look here, Monster, this is what I'll do. I'll pick your show up for 10 shows. I'll give you a base price of X. If you hit this many likes, you get this. You get this many shares, you get this. The ladder. You want that show to be stacked. You want it to have to do well. And they know the pay-per-view market. They killed it. Vince has killed the pay-per-view market because AEW is still trying. But let's be honest, as stacked as Full Gear was, you can't bring yourself to spend $49 for a pay-per-view anymore. With the exception of a boxing or a UFC or something to this effect, that's,
Well, no, and in that same regard,
and even those are sparing because you can go to Wild Wings and watch them.
Yeah, and
so
in
the
that
pay-per-view
same
market is dead.
Yeah, and when you're talking about AEW, so it's slightly different because they have a set fan base. They're really not growing in any new markets or anything, which is another downside, I think, because of WWE and how they've been the last few years, that the wrestling market is where it's going to be. You've got your WWE fans, and you can get some mainstream people in there every now and then just by having a celebrity or something show up because they know what it is. But AEW is kind of off in its own little world, and you've got their set amount of fans, and they kind of fluctuate a little bit, but they're not growing really. It's what it is. So
the fact that they hit a little over 1 million viewers with CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, and then it regressed after that, and it went back to about I think they average anywhere from about 800,000 to close to 1 million views a week on Dynamite on Wednesday nights. Which, don't get me wrong, that's nothing to sneeze at. It's not that.
No.
But Raw and SmackDown are still pulling in like 2.5 million viewers a week. Even as shitty as it is, they still pull that in. And it just seems like you bring in those amount of talents, and once you hit that million mark, you don't go back down. You've got to stay there, and you've got to keep going.
Yeah. So even for like your point to somebody like me who I still watch Raw and SmackDown, and I kind of fast forward through them, but at the same time, if I've got something to do, like the other day when I'm putting the desk together, I turn on SmackDown in the background, let it play, and I work on what I'm working on. And if I catch something good, I'll look up over there and say, okay, that was cool, and then I go back to what I was doing. You don't really have that with AEW, right? It's a different fan base.
Well, they have their market, and it's the pro wrestling fans. And sadly, the pro wrestling fan is almost died out because Vince about killed them out. Sports entertainment fans, you've got a few more of those still, and the casual person, just because they know the brand, they know they've heard it, they've heard their aunt, their uncle, or someone speak on it. You've known me since we were very young. Did you ever think there'd be a day when I would not watch a Monday Night Raw?
No. I
mean,
can I say what I thought there'd be a day you wouldn't watch the entire show or enjoy the entire show? Sure, but to not watch it at all, no.
I mean, for years, as much as I love football, I would watch wrestling over football.
Yeah.
Without hesitation. People are like, you can watch the game? No, not unless the Packers are playing. Now, the Falcons and Broncos are playing. I change back and forth like the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah.
However, I was watching Raw. And in the last 6 months, I've just got to where I just can't stomach Raw. I watch AEW every week. And I even watch the Friday night show. And I try to catch SmackDown, but it does seem to be a little much if I watch SmackDown leading into the Friday AEW, because then you're up to a 3-hour wrestling, and 2 hours is about all I can stomach any longer. Which I will say, Saturday and Sunday I sat there for the majority of the weekend because I didn't have shit to do, and just cut on Peacock, cut on the old Survivor Series. I started with 87 and just started working my way forward. And those shows you could enjoy them. I mean, and some things I remember, some things I didn't remember, but they were enjoyable. And like my fiance, she was sitting there with me, and even she was like, "These are so much better than like what we watch on Monday night."
Yeah,
I
but
was like,
and I think a part of that is to what you were talking about with the streaming, though, which is where I was trying to get to a minute ago. You know, AEW has what they have. WWE fans have, what they have, but they have the streaming service. So if I'm sitting at home and I got nothing else to watch, like this long weekend coming up, if I watch through all of my shows and movies and stuff, I can go turn on an old one. Then I might just pick up and watch Monday Night Raw next week on streaming, or I might watch the pay-per-view on streaming but it kills the competition portion, I think, of the shows trying to actually for Monday Night Raw, trying to outdo the next week's Raw, or trying to outdo SmackDown, or the pay-per-view needing to be all this big star-studded stuff happening. Well, now it's all being paid for out of the same pocket all the time, and I pay $5 a month, $5.36 with tax for watch all I
Vince
want
doesn't
to.
care about the content he puts out. He's got complacent anyways because
Yes,
hasn't had competition in 20 years. And when AEW started spiking and like Jericho and a few signed, I think he got scared. He paid a few guys more than he should have. Then he took the huge chunk of money from the Peacock and all them and then Fox gave him a ton of money. So he got like a lot of lucrative contracts really quick to where he's locked down for several years, and he doesn't have to worry about the success or whether it does good or whatever. He's paid
and he
at this
doesn't have
point.
to worry about making money on the live shows either, like the in person, right? The ticket sales. Like it'd be great to make
Well, they
more
were
on those
more
ticket
profitable
sales.
the year they didn't run live sales.
Well, it'd be great to make those ticket sales now, though. But at the same time, they've also looked at it and said, okay, like everybody else, I think they've realized people have stayed home for 2 years now because of this disease. A few people want to get out and still come to stuff, and most people are just as
Oh, yeah.
content to sit at home and watch it. And we're not going to make the same thing we used to on ticket sales, no matter what we do. And I'll give you an example. This is how bad it was. I noticed that AEW was in my area a few weeks ago, and I was thinking about buying tickets to it, but then I found I had to travel for work that same week. So the week we took off, AEW was in my area, right? So beforehand, the ticket sales were $169 a ticket for floor seats for the first 5 rows on the floor. By the time the show came around, they still had tickets in all of those seats, and they were down to $29 a piece the day of the show.
Wow.
And
So
I
they
looked
basically
at
had to pay for the show.
Yeah, and then I looked at Monday Night Raw because they have one here in January in my area, and it's like it's actual Monday night. It's a Raw show. It's not a house show for the Raw team. It's actually Monday Night Raw. It's about $190 for 4 seats in the back of the floor section. Now I'm going to go back and check again when it comes time for the show if I haven't decided that I'm going to go, which I don't think I am, because again I don't want to pay that and go sit there when I can watch it on TV and it hasn't been as good.
Yeah.
But they don't have to worry about those sales anymore. It's like, if we sell them, we sell them. If we don't, we'll put them on there cheap. And
I used to never
WWE,
miss an event when they were live in our area. I seen the other day where day one, their new pay per view. This is the inaugural
yeah,
day one pay per view. It's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. And then the first thing he was, oh shit, I need to try to go to this.
yeah,
I mean,
that's
the
why I
last pay per view
texted
I
it to
went
you when I
to
saw it.
was, yeah, I mean, the last pay per view I went to was WrestleMania in Atlanta. Yeah, it's been a fat little minute, but then on the other hand, I'm just like, do I really want to waste a couple $100 on 2 seats? And it'd be a shit show like what they're Survivor. Because if this is what they put out with Survivor Series, I'm scared. The January pay per view is almost always a throwaway.
Yeah,
Because it's literally, I think, a few weeks prior to Royal Rumble, anyways.
and that's the big one.
So, I mean, let's be honest. If it's a few weeks prior to Rumble, is it going to be anything of consequence?
No, these pay-per-views aren't building storylines. They're not. They're progressing the same way it's going on Raw that they could do on Raw or on SmackDown. And
It's
it used to be
almost
a
like Raw 2.0.
it used to be a status thing though for a lot of people. Like, oh hey, even folks who didn't really get into it, we can go to an event and watch it. And now it's like, why spend money on that? I can just sit at home and do what I want to. And it doesn't have the same prestige it used to. So why bother? And I think they've realized those ticket sales are never coming back. I think with the shape of today's world,
I don't
theater
think
as
they
well as
cared,
that.
to be honest.
I don't think they do either because of the money they've gotten on the contracts they have, and it's just like, why bother to
Well,
try? We know
they
it's
made
not coming, and we
record
don't have to.
profits the year they didn't have live events because the overhead of the cost of traveling,
Yeah,
moving the arenas, setting up the stages and the ring, the crews. I mean, all that, the people they had to employ to go live. It's a great overhead, and without that overhead, Vince made more money
yeah.
out of
So
the
it's kind of
studio.
like out of sight, out of mind. I'm not going to worry about it anymore.
I
But
don't think we'll see the days of the pro wrestling popularity are gone. I don't think
oh
we'll
yeah,
ever see it back to the mecca it was.
no, I don't think so either. But with that, I think we're kind of running a little tight on time. So if you're ready, we'll move into our nerd out section of the show. This is the section for new listeners where we ask each other random questions out of the blue that we've not had any time to prepare for except for what we're going to ask. And I think this week you go first, Hassel, because I think I went first last time. So,
All
what
right.
is your question?
Oscar, as you know, Survivor Series, we've had some of the greatest debuts. The Undertaker, The Rock, been a few others. I'm gonna hit you with a what if. What if in 1990? Okay, set the stage. That's the year The Undertaker debuts. They took Mean Mark Callis and made him into The Undertaker, and he kicks the shit out of Dusty Rhodes to make his impression. And this is the year that, Ted DiBiase's got 6 people. On the other side, you just got Hogan, Warrior, and Tito Santana. What if Sting had debuted on a face team that very night and he went to the final round with Hogan, Warrior, Tito? How big would Sting have wound up being had he made the jump in 1990 like The Undertaker did and debuted there alongside Hogan, Warrior?
That's a tough one because my first response would be, is Sting. So he would have, gotten over. But I don't know if he would have at that time. I mean, he was getting there in WCW, but without longer period of time in WCW, and then how he learned how to adapt his character when he did, versus the NWO, would he have still survived, had the longevity he had? Would he have been as popular? And would they have known what to do with him? I think that's the one thing is in WCW, he got the opportunity to do whatever kind of how he wanted to do things for the most part, as long as they didn't give him a terrible idea. Because let's be honest, he's while he's a great icon in the ring, he is not a wrestling mind. He's not putting together the match. He's not booking things. He's just kind of like, okay, what do you want me to do? All right, let me get my things in, and we can do whatever you need me to do. I don't know how he would have survived in WWF at that time because it sounded like, from everything I've listened to and heard in the past, they were really competitive with each other, right? They were really pushing, like, who's going to be the best, who's going to be the top guy. Here's my ideas, here's your ideas, and I don't know how he would have survived in that atmosphere. Now, for the star power of his debut at that time, I think it would have made a huge bump in ratings for them. I think it would have been a great deal for him to get in there earlier. But even thinking about the match everybody wanted between him and Undertaker, that was kind of later in his career when he became the Crow Sting, was when everybody wanted to see those two go at it. You really didn't hear about it much before that. So would it have been as beneficial for him or not? I don't know. That's a hard what if. I don't know if that would have made as much of an impact as I would have liked to have seen it make. I think if you go to 98, 99 and had him debut, or 96 to 99 somewhere in there and had him debut over there, then might have made a bigger impact by waiting that much longer. But I would have liked to have seen it just to see how it went.
I'm going to say, I think he has massive business. By 1990, he had already been WCW champion. He had roughly, 2 years with Ric Flair. They were married for the
Oh yeah,
first couple of years. So he had 2 years with Ric Flair by this point. You've seen what Vince did with Ultimate Warrior. And Ultimate Warrior is by far the lower tier of what Sting and him were. I think if he moves in 90 alongside that, because we already know in 2 months, Warrior drops the belt to Slaughter. He never gets the belt back. A few months later, he's gone. They try to bring him back a year later. Last few months he's gone. So I mean, Warrior's pretty well done after WrestleMania or Survivor SummerSlam the next. So within the year, Warrior's out of the picture. Hogan's in and out. I think Vince would have elevated Sting to what he wanted Warrior to be, because Sting had that $1 million body like Vince loves. He had the tan. He was a younger, better conditioned athlete of what Hogan was by this time. Because by this time, Hogan was wearing down. Let's be honest. I mean, even as a Hulkamaniac, hell, he'd been on top for 6 years by this point. And look at the talent he could have had to work with there, to where he would continue to learn. You had Rick Rude there. Rick Rude pulled some amazing matches out with Warrior, and then him and Sting had some really great matches later on. You had a Jake the Snake Roberts. Yeah, him and Sting and Jake the Snake Roberts could have had one hell of a feud in WWF.
That would have been a good one.
I mean, there's just so much talent he could have worked with there. You know, he could have been learning from Bret Hart, you know, before Bret Hart got sour on the business. And I think eventually he would have still, you know, we'd have probably still got Crow, even though he wouldn't have been feuding with the NWO. I mean, he got the idea from Scott Hall. So what's to say he didn't catch that, you know, just 6 months to a year earlier than when he did, and shift his character? Because Diesel, he was the one that told Undertaker, "Hey, if you don't shift your character at some point, you're gonna get left behind. If you're always just a dead man, you have no marketability anywhere other than WWF." And you know, it took him a little while before he fucking made the shift to American Badass, but. I mean, I just think, could you imagine Sting and Shawn Michaels in their primes?
Oh, that'd been great. To your point, though, if you'd have had, and I guess I didn't consider about him taking Warrior's spot, but if you'd have just kind of pushed Warrior to the side and said, if you brought Sting instead of Warrior there, I think that Sting would have been, because he was a team player, he was going to do whatever Vince asked, whereas Warrior was not. Warrior was all about him.
Vince would have got Sting instead of Warrior on day one.
It would have been a much better.
He'd eventually got his time with Flair anyways, because Flair spent a year and a half there.
Yeah.
So he'd have still got his time with Flair. I mean, God bless. Learn from Macho, man. You know, before Macho got, you know, the way he did after him and Elizabeth's divorce. I mean, goodness.
Yeah. That'd been interesting. It definitely would have been interesting to see, and it's always fun to play the what ifs. It's just hard to figure out exactly how it would have went, because, you know, we could say it went this way, but it could have gotten there. And he's like, you know, with Sting being the entrepreneur type guy he is, where he was buying property and selling property and stuff like that on the side, or owning his gyms and stuff, he might have got there events, and Vince said, "You got to give all that up," and he might have said, "No, I'm out of here." You never know, but it would have been interesting to see. Good question.
So, give us your nerd out, Monster. What you got?
Well, since we're talking about Survivor Series, and it's typically that 5-on-5, and I kind of went with a question where we're gonna talk about 5 different, you know, let's pick 5 different people for something, but instead of, everybody always talks about what's your Mount Rushmore of wrestling, which is, you know, 4 people on your Mount Rushmore. Who are your greatest? I wanted to see what you thought. Who are your 5 most underrated, underappreciated, or underutilized wrestlers? Like, who are the 5 people who should be in conversations for greats? Maybe not the greatest ever, but they should be in that conversation. And since we're doing Survivor Series, I said 5 instead of 4, you know, as the Mount Rushmore. But who are the 5 that you would have said, hey, these people should be in conversation? Now, they're never going to be the number 1 people, but they get overlooked a lot because they were either underappreciated, they just weren't there, or maybe they were underutilized. They weren't there enough. Something happened. They were injured. They were out, or they just get overlooked because somebody next to them takes the spotlight off of them.
Ooh, that's a good one there. Oh, and there's no way for me to do this and not gloss over somebody and later on be kicking myself in the ass.
Same thing. I struggled trying to come up with 5 people, and I still debated on a couple others. Like,
I'm going to say, I got to start off with the man who says that everybody has a price. The $1 Million Man, it is a travesty this guy was never world champion.
He is one of my
He didn't
runner-ups.
need the belt. He did not need the belt, but he would have been a great heel champion.
Yeah.
So I start with $1 Million Man. Scott Hall is another one. Whether he was Razor Ramon or Scott Hall, he even when he was a drunk in WCW, he still pulled out great matches with whoever he was put on the card with. And even though he was a money grubbing dick, he didn't mind putting over guys like Jericho at a time when it wasn't the thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, hell, he put over 1, 2, 3 Kid, for Christ's sake. I mean, he didn't mind doing business. So I think a clear hit of Scott Hall. Ravishing Rick Rude does not get the acclaim he should. Like, he was even WCW champion, but he doesn't get the accolade of it because it was the international championship at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is one that could have very well been the man for a company. Owen Hart is another that, you know, he could pull it out with anybody. And I think Vince really, really dropped the ball. When he brought him back as the Black Heart, and he was the only heart left, he chose to stay. And they put him in the program with Shawn, and then they killed him immediately with that nugget line. I mean, but dude, they could have really, really done something there because he was finally out from under Brett's shadow. But I mean, he just put on great shows every night.
Yeah.
So that's what, 4? I need one more.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Vader doesn't really get the credit he deserves.
That's a good one.
While he was the man in WCW during a down period, he should have got the spot that Sid had in '96. I mean, it's well documented. That was what he was brought in to do, and Shawn threw a hissy fit. But had Shawn done business and he got that spot, man, that would have been massive, and he would have probably stayed and done good business for Vince for quite a while. So yeah, I'm gonna go with those 5 there.
Those were all good. And I'll tell you, I had one of the ones you picked as well as I debated on Ted DiBiase. I passed over him just because of some of the others I picked. I thought it was a debate between him and them, but I ended up going with some of these others. But Ravishing Rick Rude I did have on my list. I think he was very overlooked, and while he did some really great things, that Vince just had it out for him after the whole insurance ordeal and everything else with him. So he was never going to use him again. And then by the time he's back in WCW, he's kind of lost some of what he was. But he's, and I think a lot of that was that time off from that. But he should have been much more in that conversation of being one of the greatest than he's ever going to get credit for. I said I passed over $1 Million Man, and then I also passed over Arn Anderson because I thought Arn was great, and Arn was not as great a talker, but he's always going to be in Flair's shadow.
Ooh, great worker. He was a runner-up.
But one other person that I picked that was also in Flair's shadow, Tully Blanchard, and I picked Tully over Arn because I thought Tully was the better talker between him and Arn. Now, as far as in the ring, that's probably debatable. It's probably Arn, but Tully probably could have done more if he'd have been out from under Flair's shadow as an individual.
I'm not
he's always going to be Flair-like
than Tully, just because Tully had a lot of success before the Horsemen. The reason people remember Arn so much more is because Arn had the longevity. Because after the WWF run, Tully vanished.
Yeah,
but Tully had such an ability to draw heat. Now, this man is 65 years old right now, out there with FTR, and can still cut a great promo and make you just want to push this old fucker down. So I would probably you've got a great pick right here, Monster. I mean, that's
but he's always going to be Flair light because he was great as an individual, but then as soon as he hit the Horseman, he was perfect for the team. But nobody's ever going to say that he was going to be a breakout star against Flair. He's always going to be in his shadow. Somebody else I think that's always going to be in Flair's shadow because the way Flair came into WWF, but he would have been great if he just stayed by himself or stayed healthy enough to be on his own. But Mr. Perfect. So he was great in the ring. He should have been world champion, and his gimmick was perfect for him because he played that gimmick exactly the way it should be. However, he was either sick or injured. I can't remember what it was. But then when Flair comes in, he's basically him and Flair and Heenan together, and he's kind of basically in Flair's shadow, just like Tully. And by the time he got out of that and Flair was off doing his own thing and Mr. Perfect by himself again, he's either getting out of WWF, and when he gets in WCW, he is in no shape to be what he used to be. I mean, he's strung out on stuff at this point. So
yeah, when he returned to be Macho Man's partner, he took the spot that was supposed to be in Warrior, and Warrior held him up for money. I watched that match. For him not to have wrestled in 2 years, he done incredibly well. But you could see he was blown up and out of shape. You could tell in his singlet that I'd never seen Mr. Perfect with a dad bod a little bit, and he had that kind of rocking a little bit in that there, but he still did hit all the spots and did great. And I was at the Royal Rumble in Atlanta in 2000 when he comes a surprise entrant, and dude, the roof blew off. When Perfect came out, because that's the first time he came back as Mr. Perfect. Since what, 94, 95, somewhere in there, and dude, he looked good. I mean, I thought that he had got I thought he looked far better than he ever did in WCW.
In WCW, he was strung out at that point. I mean, but he's never, because he spent so much time not in the ring in WWF, I think people have just kind of overlooked him for that conversation of how good was he and could he have been, because he spent a lot of time playing the gimmick because he couldn't wrestle, or like you said, 2 years off and wasn't wrestling. That people just kind of forget that he was actually probably one of the best ones to get in the ring. But my next pick was probably a surprising one for most people, or at least for you for knowing me. But Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. You don't have hardly anything that Hogan accomplished if he didn't have Orndorff on the other side as his foil. Because you had other people like Roddy, who was the talker, but Orndorff was the guy in the ring with Hogan.
Orndorff was the guy that turned on him to get that. And he got that at that point in time when you turned on Hulk Hogan. Oh my goodness, that is monster heat.
And he was great in the other territories and stuff in the territory days. And he was, unfortunately his health didn't last long enough. But if he was able to stay at that level he was at when he turned on Hogan and stuff, and for a longer period of time, I could see him being one of your great heel champions along with DiBiase and a few others, right? But he just wasn't able to ever get to that point.
Had he been in the NWA during that era, after turning on Hogan, had he made the jump sooner, oh yeah, he'd have been world champion without doubt. But you got to look. I mean, there was no way they were taking off the belt off Hogan during that run, and Flair wasn't losing the belt on the other side. So
yeah. And my last pick, to your point about Flair not losing the belt on the other side, my last pick was Ricky Steamboat. Steamboat while he does get in some of the conversations about being one of the better ones in the ring, you still have a lot of matches that you only have so many memorable matches of him. It's kind of like he was in there and he did a lot of great stuff. He had a lot of great matches, but only these few are the ones people still talk about, like him and Macho Man, some of him and Flair. But at the same time, he got out of it at a fairly young age as well because of, I think health issues and stuff. But even before he did that, they took his dragon gimmick away and he's the family man and everything else. And it's like, before he had that,
I wasn't a fan of that during his world title run. But I mean, I think a lot of people forget just how great his last WCW run was. I mean, even though he didn't, reclaim the world title during his last WCW run around 94, 95, the man won the U.S. title on multiple occasions, the television title on multiple occasions, tag titles with various partners. I mean, he probably held 10 different championships during those last 2 years that he was wrestling for WCW. So, but it was during a very down period when WCW was, while they were probably putting out superior wrestling quality, their production value was shit. Their fan base was terrible. I mean, but he probably doesn't get the acclaim he should.
No, he had all the ability to be there and everything. He just didn't have, I guess, the production value around him at all times to push it. And you still remember certain things with him, like some of his stuff with Flair and his match in WrestleMania 3 with Macho Man. You'll never forget those, but those are one-offs, right? What's the whole legacy?
A lot of people have said his
overlook.
ex-wife was what kind of was the downfall of him. Like, apparently she was the business negotiator, and she was the one that got between him and Vince, and why he left to go to WCW. And then when they put the belt on him, she kind of was behind the scenes, rubbing a lot of people the wrong way.
Gotcha.
Which is why he, didn't keep anything. And then I think he took some time away, went back, and then got saddled with that awful flamethrower gimmick for about a year or so. And yeah.
I mean, he's one of your great baby faces, and I don't discount him being a family guy when he did that gimmick, but that gimmick killed a lot of momentum for him. Dragon was one thing. The family man, that was quite a different thing.
There was a huge heel turn in the 90s, early 90s. I forget who it was now that done a huge heel turn, and he wanted that. He wanted to do that. And Pat Patterson said, "You can't do it, Ricky. No one will ever boo you."
Yeah, no one's
he
going
was
to
just
buy
that consummate. That I mean, he's a good-looking kid. You're not booing him, and he's got a sweet. You just look at the eyes. Like, I can't get mad at you.
Yeah,
you're just a sweet, simple guy. I can't.
Yeah, that's kind of how it went for him. But I think that brings us pretty close to time for today. So you want to plug you want to give us a few social media plugs there? Where can we find us at?
You can find us on Twitter now. We are on the old Twitter there. You can hit us up at Nerdy MR Show, and hit us with your questions. Hit us with retweets. We put clips of the show on there. We're doing some shorter clips now. The Man Room Shorts, promoting them on there, and we stay pretty active on there. We post pictures and retweet things we see of value and nerdy news and so forth. So hit us up on there.
All right. And with that, I think that brings today's episode to a close. But if you enjoyed this video or any of our other content, give us a like, subscribe, comment, or share. It always helps the channel out. And join us here next time as we talk about all things television related. Until then, live nerdy and be the sole survivor.
Zero metal.